Generation 1. For most fans of the Pokemon series, this is the most beloved and nostalgic generation to ever exist in the franchise. However, regardless of our fondness towards the original Pokemon games, one cannot deny that there was tons wrong with the red and blue versions, mechanic-wise. I'm not referring to grossly designed sprites or anything I'm not referring to grossly designed sprites or anything like that, but rather the overall mechanics of these games. Sure, they were revolutionary at the time, but compared to the way that battles work nowadays, you'll find that things were, flawed. Keep in mind, I'm in no way calling these games bad, I just think it's fun to take a gander at them once again and poke fun at all the little screw-ups. Don't get defensive, I love these games just as much as you do, this is all just in good fun. Enjoy the video.
Number 20. Every attack in the game, except for Swift, had at least a 1 in 256 chance of missing. This means that you've always got a slim chance of not landing your attacks, which is pretty frustrating. Nowadays, a majority of moves are guaranteed to land before stat changes, but back in those days, no moves were safe. And with a ratio like that, you're bound to miss a move eventually for absolutely no reason at all. Number 19. The move Struggle, which is a last resort move that Pokemon use once they've exhausted all their other attacks, had absolutely no effect on Ghost types. The game recognized Struggle as a normal type move, which, if you didn't know, cannot hit Ghosts. Sure, most of the time when you use Struggle, it usually results in a loss anyways, but if you were to face off against a Gengar, for example, you'd know for 100% that you're screwed. Number 18. The move Disable used to disable a random move of the enemies, not the one that they used last. This pretty much meant that no strategy went into using Disable. You just had to cross your fingers and hope that you got rid of the move that you were aiming for. Number 17. There are two variants of poison in Pokemon. One, which is just normal poison, saps away a fixed amount of the victimized Pokemon's health every turn. The second, bad poisoning, would suck away a certain amount of health every turn, and then take away double that amount the next turn, and so on. That's not where the flaw comes into play though, no. You see, in Generation 1, you could afflict bad poison, but if you switched out, it would revert to normal poison, making Toxic kinda useless. Number 16. The flawed move Mimic works sorta similar to the way that Disable did. Instead of copying the last move used by the opponent, it copied a completely random one. But in addition to this, if you mimicked a move that your Pokemon already knew, it would still learn it. This meant Mimic could be used to duplicate moves on your movesets. Number 15. If you didn't already know, there are multi-hit moves in Pokemon such as Double Slap and Fury Attack that do anywhere between 2 to 5 hits per turn. These moves are seemingly harmless, but in Gen 1 they had the potential to do a boatload of damage. This is because if one of the 5 or so attacks was a critical hit, they all became critical hits. This is obviously especially deadly if the amount of hits came out to be 5. Number 14. The frozen status. Everybody hates it. It's annoying, and you never know when it's gonna hit you. But if you think being frozen is unfortunate now, take a gander at the original Pokemon games. The only way to thaw out back then was to get hit by a fire move or haze, otherwise you're stuck in popsicle purgatory forever, my friend. Have fun! Number 13. This next flaw really screws up the metagame of Gen 1. Okay, not a ton of kiddos back then really cared about duking it out competitively, but let's say you did. You'd find that to your dismay, Whirlwind and Roar did literally nothing. The moves didn't work, making them equally as useful as Splash. This means that if your opponent suddenly decided to use Swords Dance a few times, you'd be in a heap of trouble. And make it double. Number 12. As most Pokemon fans know, Paralysis is a status that cuts a Pokemon's speed in half, while Burn is one that cuts a Pokemon's attack in half. There aren't a ton of remedies for these things mid-battle, but did you know Agility used to be a solution for regaining lost speed due to Paralysis? It may not have removed the paralysis itself, but it would definitely bring your speed back up to normal levels, and then, on top of that, still give you the initial speed boost all in one turn. The same can be applied with Swords Dance and the Burn status. It would bring your attack back to normal, and then immediately double it. Number 11. Ordinarily, the move Substitute will fail if a Pokemon's health is too low to make the desired sub. This also applies to Generation 1, except in one case. If you are unfortunate enough to use the move while you have exactly 25% of your health remaining, you will faint. Keep in mind this means you have to be at a very specific amount of health, but if you are, you're practically pressing a big ol' suicide button. Number 10. Recovery moves also didn't work if your health was at a very specific amount while battling. If you were missing exactly 255 or 511 HP below your max health, the move would fail. Sure, it didn't kill you like Substitute did, but the move would inexplicitly not work at all. Number 9. You know, Hyper Beam has really lost a lot of potential over the years, but in the days of Red and Blue, this thing was a gem worth using whenever possible. This is mainly due to a huge exploit, but whatever, we'll take it. Normally, the downside to using this powerful attack is you have to wait the entire next turn before doing anything else. While still applicable to Gen 1, you actually did not have to recharge if you made a Pokemon faint with Hyper Beam. And since the move is so strong, this was usually the result. It's probably a good thing that we've nerfed the crap out of this attack. Number 8. The moves Leech Seed and Toxic used to stack, so to speak. To elaborate, Toxic would do its initial double damage every turn, but if you threw a Leech Seed on top of that, the Leech Seed would also do the same thing Toxic did. The best way I can explain this is like so. The Toxic Poison would drain health, then the Seed would drain double the health that Toxic did, then the next Toxic would do double the damage that the previous Leech Seed did, and so on. Number 7. This next one is actually kind of hilarious. If you're feeling courageous and decide to go for a ton of stat boosts using Swords Dance, Agility, etc., you might end up paying for it if you go too overboard. In current Pokemon games, if you use one too many stat boost attacks, you'll simply be told that the stat won't go any higher. In Gen 1, the stat would roll over and become absurdly low, meaning the initial times for attack that you wanted has now become 1/100th of the power that it used to be. That'll teach you to use Swords Dance. Number 6. Want to create the stalemate of the century? Well, listen up. Say you're paralyzed and decide to use Fly or Dig. Now, you might pull this off and actually land the attack, but if you become fully paralyzed the turn you're in the air/ground, you'll be stuck up there until you again use the move that put you there in the first place, or switch out. If you don't, your opponent will never be able to hit you, unless he/she is running Swift, which might not be a bad idea. Number 5. Sleep Clause is around for a reason, but did you know there was actually a time when sleep aggravated people even more than it does now? This is because waking up from the sleep status used to take an entire turn on its own. Thankfully, the AI was sometimes dumber than a bag of rocks, but if your opponent really wanted to, they could put you in an eternal slumber. The only thing preventing this is a miss or lack of PP. This one bugged me the most, in particular as a kid. Number 4. Oh boy, we're getting into some real garbage now. Substitutes. These guys didn't protect you from statuses, leaving you vulnerable to things such as paralysis and poison, and if you use Hyper Beam on a sub, the user won't have to recharge. The move has a ton of metagame potential now, but back in my day, sonny, you just wanted to steer clear of the move entirely. Oh, even worse, if you use Explosion on a foe that has made a substitute, you won't die. Number 3. While Substitute wasn't completely worthless, the move Focus Energy definitely was. Actually, no, calling it worthless is giving Focus Energy way too much credit. Why? This attack does the exact opposite of what the game intends it to do. While it was intended to multiply the user's critical hit ratio by 4, it instead divides the critical hit ratio by 4. Use this move in absolutely no scenario unless you really want a challenge or something. Number 2. Oh, Arceus Almighty, the attacks just keep getting worse. Rage is an abomination to the Pokemon move pool. First of all, if you wanted to use Rage, you had to be committed to it. Once this bad boy got fired up, Rage could not stop being used after the first use until death. But maybe you plan on escaping its clutches by depleting all of Rage's PP. Well, you can't. It never ran out of PP except for the first one that you used in the first place. And you really better have hoped Rage didn't miss, because if it did, the accuracy of it from that point forward would become a whopping 1 in 256 chance of landing. Simply put, as the name implies, this move will make you rage! Number 1. Critical hits were determined by speed, not chance. This might not make much sense now, but trust me when I say, oh lordy, this changed everything. The game followed a simple yet broken formula when it came to crits, this formula being base speed divided by 512. This meant that Pokemon with a low base speed definitely got the short end of the stick. However, Pokemon such as Persian and Dugtrio who had very high base speeds were made unstoppable crit landing machines. Alone, these guys only had about a 20% chance of landing a critical, but teach them Slash, and that number skyrockets. Since Slash made critical hits 8 times more likely to land, their critical hit ratio became an unholy percentage of 99.6. That's incredible. Incredibly broken, but still incredible. Thanks for watching my silly Pokemon video, everyone. If you enjoyed it, click here to subscribe and you'll get much more content just like it. Hey, speaking of similar videos, here's some that I already made. You should watch them. I worked slightly hard on them. Oh, and be sure to like them while you're there. Thanks. You the best.